Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, I want to ask you something very simple. Have you ever noticed that the stories we hear about countries are never the full stories? We hear the headlines, the accusations, the dramatic moments, but we rarely hear the truth that lies behind the scenes, the truth that explains why things really happen the way they do. Today, I'm going to share with you a truth about US-Pakistan relations that no one admits, a truth that doesn't fit into political speeches or television debates. It's the truth people feel but never say. And once you understand it, the entire relationship, its ups, its downs, its confusion, will suddenly make sense. I want you to listen not as Americans or Pakistanis, not as analysts or critics, but as people who believe that relationships, whether between two people or two nations, can only grow when we dare to speak honestly. What I'm about to share may surprise you, it may challenge what you've been told, and it may even make you uncomfortable. But I promise you one thing, if you stay with me until the end, you will walk away seeing this relationship with completely new eyes. So sit back, open your mind, and let us explore the untold truth, the truth hidden beneath decades of diplomacy, strategy, and silence. Because once the truth is spoken, only then can a new future begin. Let's start. The relationship between the United States and Pakistan has always been shaped more by circumstance than by genuine alignment, which is why it is often described as a partnership built on mutual need rather than mutual understanding. Historically, both nations have turned to each other at moments when strategic advantages outweighed ideological differences. During the Cold War, Pakistan became a valuable ally for the US because of its geographic proximity to the Soviet Union, not because the two shared political philosophies or economic visions. In return, Pakistan saw the United States as a powerful supporter capable of providing military assistance, international legitimacy, and economic aid. This made the relationship transactional from the very beginning, with each side approaching cooperation as a means to achieve specific short-term goals. This dynamic continued into the post-9/11 era when the US needed Pakistan's support for counterterrorism operations and regional stability. Pakistan again found itself in a position where partnership with the US promised security benefits and financial support. Yet, even in these periods of close coordination, both countries misunderstood each other's priorities. American policymakers expected Pakistan to fully align with US strategies, often overlooking Pakistan's regional realities, internal political pressures, and national security concerns. Meanwhile, Pakistan expected long-term strategic loyalty and broad economic commitment from the US, but often encountered conditional assistance and shifting expectations based on Washington's changing global agenda. This mismatch created a cycle where cooperation existed, but understanding did not. Every time one side felt its interests were not being met, frustration grew. American leaders often viewed Pakistan's actions as inconsistent or insufficient, while Pakistan perceived US involvement as intrusive or unpredictable. The result was a relationship continuously activated by crises and paused by disappointment. Instead of building toward a shared vision, both nations repeatedly returned to the partnership only when external events forced them to. Over time, this pattern limited the potential for deeper engagement. While the US invested heavily in security-related cooperation, it rarely pursued broad economic or educational partnerships that could have fostered mutual trust. Similarly, Pakistan often prioritized immediate benefits over long-term stability, reinforcing the perception that its commitment was driven by necessity rather than strategic alignment. Thus, the relationship became defined not by who the two nations are or what they value, but by what they temporarily need from one another at critical moments. At the heart of US-Pakistan relations lies a quiet but persistent mistrust, a tension that has shaped the behavior of both nations far more than official statements or diplomatic gestures suggest. Publicly, each country calls the other an ally, a partner, or a strategic friend, but privately they operate with caution, calculating every move through a lens of suspicion. This mistrust did not emerge overnight. It is the accumulated result of decades of misunderstandings, unmet expectations, shifting priorities, and conflicting national interests that neither side has ever fully addressed. For the United States, Pakistan has often appeared as an unpredictable partner, cooperative at times, resistant at others. American policymakers have struggled to reconcile Pakistan's internal security challenges, regional rivalries, and political complexities with Washington's own expectations. When Pakistan acted in ways that diverge from U.S. strategies, American officials interpreted it as unwillingness rather than the outcome of Pakistan's unique pressures. This perception gradually created a belief in Washington that Pakistan's partnership was conditional and that trust should be extended only with caution. On the other side, Pakistan has long viewed the United States as a powerful ally whose promises sometimes fall short and whose commitment fluctuates with global politics. Every period of cooperation has been followed by phases of disengagement, leaving Pakistan feeling abandoned precisely when continuity was needed most. This deepened the belief that American support is driven not by lasting friendship but by temporary strategic requirements. When U.S. policies shifted quickly, whether after the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan or changing priorities in the war on terror, Pakistan interpreted these shifts as signs that Washington valued convenience over loyalty. This dual mistrust affects not only diplomatic decisions, but also public sentiment in both countries. In Pakistan, suspicion toward U.S. motives often becomes part of political rhetoric and public discourse. In the U.S., skepticism about Pakistan's reliability repeatedly surfaces in congressional debates and policy reviews. Both sides end up reinforcing each other's doubts, creating a self-fulfilling cycle where trust becomes increasingly difficult to rebuild. The result is a relationship where cooperation happens, but confidence rarely follows. Even at moments of close coordination, each nation questions how long the partnership will last. The words spoken in official meetings and press conferences often paint a picture of unity, but behind closed doors, calculations are dominated by the fear that the other side may change course at any time. This persistent mistrust remains a central barrier, preventing the relationship from evolving into something deeper and more stable. For decades, the relationship between the United States and Pakistan has been driven primarily by security concerns, with economic cooperation consistently taking a back seat. This imbalance did not emerge by accident. It was shaped by global conflicts, regional rivalries, and the strategic calculations of both nations. From the early Cold War period to the War on Terror, the U.S. viewed Pakistan largely through the prism of military strategy. Pakistan's geographic position made it a crucial player in countering Soviet influence, stabilizing Afghanistan, and supporting broader security operations in South Asia. As a result, American engagement focused heavily on defense assistance, intelligence collaboration, and military funding. While this created periods of close coordination, it also narrowed the scope of the relationship, making it dependent on crises rather than shared development goals. For Pakistan, the emphasis on security was also driven by necessity. Surrounded by regional tensions, internal security challenges, and persistent instability in neighboring Afghanistan, Pakistan prioritized military cooperation with the U.S. as a means of safeguarding national interests. The support it sought from the U.S. often revolved around defense equipment, counterterrorism partnership, and strategic leverage rather than long-term economic transformation. This reinforced the cycle in which both sides found it easier to work together on security than on sustained economic reform or development planning. The consequence of this security-first approach is that economic cooperation remained underdeveloped, fragmented, and overshadowed. While billions of dollars flowed into military programs, significantly less was directed toward large-scale infrastructure, education, trade facilitation, or innovation-driven development. American private investment in Pakistan never reached its potential because the relationship was framed around risk and instability rather than opportunity and growth. At the same time, Pakistan did not consistently present itself as a stable, investment-friendly environment, in part because political and economic policies were often shaped by security imperatives. This imbalance created a relationship that was reactive rather than visionary. When global security concerns peaked, cooperation intensified. When they faded, the partnership weakened. Without robust economic ties, the relationship lacked the resilience and continuity that come from mutual prosperity. Countries bound by trade, technology, education, and entrepreneurship tend to maintain durable relationships, but U.S.-Pakistan engagement rarely expanded into these areas comprehensively. Instead, both nations remained anchored in the patterns of the past, relying on military cooperation as the default mode of engagement. The persistent focus on security over economic collaboration limited the broader potential of the partnership and prevented the relationship from evolving into one based on shared sustainable growth. The issue of aid versus expectations has long been one of the most sensitive and misunderstood aspects of U.S.-Pakistan relations. For the United States, financial assistance, military support, and development aid are often seen as strategic investments designed to promote stability, counterterrorism, and alignment with American policy objectives. Washington tends to view its support as part of a broader effort to influence regional outcomes and encourage Pakistan to adopt policies that match U.S. priorities. Because of this mindset, American assistance frequently arrives with conditions, monitoring requirements, or expectations about how Pakistan should respond to specific security or political challenges. From the U.S. perspective, this is not unusual. It is a way of ensuring accountability and advancing strategic goals. Pakistan, however, interprets this dynamic very differently. While the country has received substantial aid over the decades, many Pakistanis perceive it as support that comes with strings attached, strings that often limit autonomy or reflect mistrust. Instead of seeing aid as investment, Pakistan tends to view it as a transactional tool used to pressure its government into alignment. This perception is shaped by historical experiences in which periods of generous support were followed by sudden freezes or reductions based on shifting American interests. Every time the U.S. reevaluates its regional priorities, Pakistan feels the impact immediately, reinforcing the belief that aid is not a gift of partnership, but a lever of influence. This gap in interpretation has created a persistent cycle of disappointment. When the U.S. offers assistance, it expects measurable cooperation in return, particularly in areas related to counterterrorism or regional stability. When Pakistan accepts the assistance, it expects long-term strategic backing and recognition of its sacrifices and challenges. But when the outcomes fail to match each side's expectations, frustration grows. The U.S. often accuses Pakistan of not doing enough, while Pakistan claims that the U.S. overlooks its contributions and imposes unfair conditions. The narrative gap is further widened by public opinion. In the United States, the idea of sending aid to a country viewed as a complicated partner sparks political debate and criticism. In Pakistan, the perception that foreign aid compromises national sovereignty fuels skepticism and resentment. As these narratives clash, the relationship becomes burdened by misunderstanding. Instead of building trust through cooperation, the aid versus expectations dynamic reinforces the sense that each side is giving more than it receives, deepening the divide and preventing the partnership from reaching its full potential. The relationship between the United States and Pakistan has long been shaped by a persistent narrative mismatch where each side interprets events, intentions, and expectations through fundamentally different lenses. This gap is not simply a matter of miscommunication. It is rooted in contrasting worldviews, strategic priorities, and political cultures. When the U.S. evaluates Pakistan's actions, it often does so from a perspective driven by global strategy and defined policy objectives. American officials expect clarity, consistency, and alignment with broader international goals. But Pakistan, shaped by regional realities, internal challenges, and shifting alliances, interprets these expectations in ways that often differ from what Washington intends. As a result, actions that the U.S. sees as straightforward are perceived by Pakistan as overly demanding, impractical, or insensitive to local conditions. This mismatch becomes most visible during times of crisis. For instance, when Washington expects immediate and decisive cooperation on security matters, it views this as a natural part of partnership. Pakistan, however, views the same expectations as ignoring its complex internal dynamics, public sentiment, and political limitations. Conversely, when Pakistan anticipates long-term support, recognition of its sacrifices, or greater respect for its sovereignty, it expects these responses as a natural acknowledgement of its strategic role. Yet the U.S. often views such expectations as unrealistic, given its own evolving priorities and global commitments. Each side believes its view is reasonable, but each is speaking in a language the other does not fully understand. This narrative gap also shapes how the two countries communicate with their domestic audiences. In the U.S., officials highlight concerns about accountability, terrorism, and reliability, which creates an image of Pakistan as a challenging partner. In Pakistan, leaders emphasize issues of dignity, sovereignty, and unequal treatment, which reinforces the perception that America acts with arrogance or selective loyalty. These public narratives harden over time, making it more difficult for policymakers to shift the conversation, even when cooperation improves behind the scenes. The gap between private diplomacy and public messaging widens, feeding suspicion on both sides. The result is a partnership where both nations believe they are acting responsibly, yet both feel misunderstood. Misinterpretation becomes normal, leading to cycles of cooperation followed by frustration. Even positive steps are overshadowed by past grievances because each side filters new developments through old assumptions. This narrative mismatch does not stem from hostility, but from deeply ingrained habits of thinking that neither country has fully addressed. It remains one of the biggest reasons why U.S.-Pakistan relations struggle to move beyond a repeating pattern of hope, disappointment, and recalibration. The most overlooked aspect of U.S.-Pakistan relations is the immense, untapped potential that lies outside the traditional corridors of diplomacy and defense. For decades, the narrative has been dominated by security concerns, aid debates, and geopolitical calculations, leaving little room for conversations about innovation, entrepreneurship, and youth-driven collaboration. Yet this is precisely where the greatest opportunity exists. Both nations possess vibrant young populations, dynamic talent pools, and emerging technological landscapes that could fundamentally reshape the relationship if both sides choose to recognize and invest in this potential. What has held them back is not a lack of capacity, but a lack of imagination. In the United States, Pakistan is often seen through the lens of instability, conflict, and strategic complexity, overshadowing the tremendous entrepreneurial spirit within the country. Pakistan has one of the largest youth populations in the world, a growing tech sector, and a generation eager to engage with global markets. American investors, universities, and tech companies, however, seldom view Pakistan as a frontier of innovation, simply because the dominant narrative has never highlighted this side of the country. This creates a missed opportunity for the U.S. to engage with Pakistan not as a security challenge, but as an economic and technological partner with long-term potential. For Pakistan, the challenge is similar yet different. The country has long relied on government-to-government relations, expecting large-scale support and diplomatic backing from the U.S., but Pakistan has not consistently leveraged the private sector ecosystem, academic exchanges, or technological partnerships that could redefine its place in global markets. Instead of viewing the United States solely as a superpower that provides aid or exerts pressure, Pakistan could view it as a gateway to advanced research, tech expertise, venture capital, and international networks that its youth urgently need. This overlooked potential becomes even more significant when considering the global shift toward digital economies. Startups, software development, AI research, e-commerce, and cybersecurity are areas where borders matter far less than innovation does. A single successful tech partnership can create more positive connection between societies than years of political negotiation. Collaboration in these fields requires fewer political calculations and offers far greater long-term benefits. Universities, incubators, and private companies on both sides can create relationships that are more resilient than government agreements because they are built on shared goals rather than shifting strategic interests. The truth is that the future of US-Pakistan relations does not depend solely on policymakers or generals. It depends on whether both nations can recognize the immense power of their human capital. By shifting focus from the problems of the past to the possibilities of the future, they can build a partnership grounded not in fear or necessity, but in innovation, opportunity, and mutual growth. The truth behind US-Pakistan relations is not hidden in secret documents or diplomatic meetings. It is hidden in the mindset that both nations have carried for decades. For too long, this relationship has lived in the shadows of mistrust, expectations, and old habits. But the world does not move forward when we repeat the same story again and again. It moves forward when someone dares to rewrite it. And the time has come to write a new chapter, one rooted in opportunity instead of fear, in innovation instead of suspicion, and in the belief that young people, ideas, and technology can achieve what politics could not. The future will not be built by those who complain about what went wrong, but by those who focus on what can still go right. If both nations choose vision over doubt, possibility over limitation, and partnership over convenience, then the next era of US-Pakistan relations will not resemble the past. It will surpass it. The real transformation will come not from agreements, but from individuals who decide to think differently, act boldly, and build fearlessly. Good luck to everyone who dares to reimagine what this relationship can be, and thank you for believing in a future that is bigger than the challenges behind us.